Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being with me. This is Friday. We've come to the end of another week. Hope it's been a good one for you and that you are excited about being in God's house with the Lord's people to worship Jesus Sunday, and that you're inviting people to come with you. You're praying for the services. And remember now, this Sunday we have 2 services, not 3. So we'll have worship at 9:45, our traditional service, and then one combined contemporary service at 11 o'clock this Sunday. So just bear that in mind. Also this Sunday, pick up your new bookmark for our Bible reading plan and D groups. It will take you through the rest of the year because the current one runs out the end of July. So pick up the new one that will take you through the end of December. They'll be available this coming Sunday in the back of the worship center on the tables where you see the D group banner. So be aware of that. Psalm 121, it's a beautiful psalm I've always enjoyed and heard people quote, and it's in Songs, verse 1, where it says, I will lift up my eyes to the hills, or that's the King James translation. I will lift up my eyes to the mountains. From where or from whence comes my help? From where shall my help come? I can remember as a kid, the legendary basketball coach at Kentucky, Adolph Rupp, used to quote his own version of that verse. I lift up my eyes to the hills, from whence comes my help? And he was referring to basketball players who grew up in the mountains of Kentucky that helped him have a lot of winning teams. For instance, Johnny Cox from Hazard, Kentucky, that helped him win the 1958 national championship and was an All-American. So Rupp would quote this, I lift up my heels to the eyes, from which comes my help. Well, Rupp may have misused this verse, but this is a very meaningful verse. It was a very meaningful verse for devout Jewish people on their way to Jerusalem and the temple for the annual holidays, the 3 festivals that they would travel there to celebrate. And as I mentioned yesterday, this is one of 15 consecutive psalms that are identified as a song or a psalm of ascent. And I can just picture them as they got closer and closer to Jerusalem, and there in the distance they could see the hill that the city is on, the Temple Mount, and they would sing this, I lift up my eye to the mountain, to the hill, to the Temple Mount. And that is where my help comes from. Verse 2, my help comes from the Lord. And so there was just this enthusiasm and beauty as they got closer to the place of worship. And the truth is, I think we should feel that way about Sunday as it gets closer. And on Sunday mornings feel that way the closer we get to church. We should come with excitement and with joy, realizing the privilege that is ours. I think sometimes familiarity breeds contempt because we do it all the time. We just take it for granted, and occasionally we need to be reminded that we are honored, privileged, special because we get together in a place designated to worship Jesus with his people. Don't take that for granted. This psalm celebrates the fact that the Lord, who is their help, is the one who provides protection. And when you trust in him, he adds stability to your life. That's what he talks about in this particular psalm. And God is he's our keeper. He's with us. I remember, read this verse 4. Behold, he who keeps Israel, talking about the Lord who is our help, will neither slumber nor sleep. I love that. I remember some years ago I was in London and I had visited a Muslim mosque and a Sikh temple, and I was visiting a Buddhist temple. And at the front were these shrines. It was a smaller temple, so they had maybe like 5 shrines at the front, each one dedicated to a particular god that Buddhists worship. Buddhists worship hundreds of gods, and so they had their 5. And one of them, I remember, it's kind of over to my right. One of them had a bell, and people would ring the bell, and I asked why. And they said, well, the bell is there, and you ring it so that when you pray to that God, in case he's asleep, the bell wakes him up. And I read verse 4 and I thought about that. I'm so thankful I don't have to wake God up. So thankful that God is always watching and aware, that He's never got His back turned to me. He's never asleep. That's our God. And so this psalm is just so beautiful. And another story, David Livingstone was in the 1800s a famous missionary and explorer from England, and really one of the first white men to explore inner Central Africa. He explored areas like Zambia, Tanzania, Malawi, and other places, Victoria Falls, which is named after Queen Victoria, the Zambezi River. And there's a town next door adjacent to Victoria Falls, which is one of the three large waterfalls in the world, like Niagara, and then the one in South America. This one on the border of Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Botswana. And that the town adjacent to it on the Zambia side of the falls is named after David Livingstone, Africa, in Zambia, rather. And before this great missionary explorer, he's years ago, I can't remember if I was in college or seminary, I did a research project on him and read several books about his life. And so I've always admired him in many, many ways. Before he left England for Africa in 1840, as he gathered with his family to worship and pray, this is the psalm he read. I'll lift up my eyes to the hills, from whence comes my help. My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. He will not allow your foot to slip. He who keeps you will not slumber. Behold, he who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade on your right hand, and the sun will not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will protect you from all evil. He will keep your soul. And in the Hebrew, that means not just your spirit as we think of it, but your life. The Lord will guard your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forever. And I can understand why David Livingstone would read that to his family before he left for unknown parts of Africa. A dangerous exploration. And I share that with you because I want to encourage you when you go through hard times and you need courage. This is a good psalm to read. And you may find that as God leads you through the hard times, He does something beautiful in your life. When David Livingstone when he died, he was on one of his explorations as a missionary and explorer. And the natives who were with him and loved him carried his body back to the coast so it could be returned to England for burial. And you can visit his gravesite in England today. But his heart, they buried it in Africa. See, when you go through a hard time, look up to the hills from where your help comes. It's the Lord. And He will give you strength. But in the midst of that dangerous place where you need courage, God will do something beautiful in your life like He did with David Livingstone. So don't be afraid. Let the truth of God encourage you. Hey, God bless you. I hope that blesses you. I'll see you Sunday as we worship Jesus. Remember, 9:45 and 11 o'clock worship only. God bless you, everybody.